Welcome to the first in a special series of Island Life programmes. Over the next few weeks, we'll be delving into the audio vaults here at the Nation Station, taking a look back at some of the highlights from Manx Radio's archives from across the decades. Today, another chance to hear an edition of In Their Own Time, presented by much-missed broadcaster and hugely respected member of the Manx Community, John Kennaugh. This programme was first broadcast in 2013 and features memories of farming in the island in conversation with Florrie Kinvig. So pull up a comfy chair, sit back and enjoy.
Dear countrymen, whate'er is left to us of ancient heritage, of manners, speech, of humours, polity, the limited horizon of our stage, old love, hope and fear, all this I fain would fix upon the page. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of In Their Own Time. I'm John Kennaugh. On the programme today, Florrie Kinvig shares her memories of life growing up in the countryside in the south of the island. Born at Ballinank, Florrie was involved in farm life from a very early age.
My grandfather farmed there. I think he was 63 or 4 and he took a heart attack and died when I was about 8 weeks old. So then my grandmother had to sell up, you see. And we went up to the Moni to live above Kennaugh because grandfather had the fields and the house. Well, we lived in the house and my mother done odd jobs and all. My father worked in Gordon's Market Garden down at the Folly at the airport. We must have been there 5 or 6 years or more. He even worked there the first year we went farming.
Without giving too much away then, what sort of year are we talking about?
Well, I don't know. I'm 90 for August.
We can work that out then.
I can work that out.
So were times hard then?
Oh, much harder than they are now. I sometimes wonder what they're complaining about. But everybody was helping each other. You see, the farms helped the people that didn't have provisions or anybody was ill or, you know, everybody helped each other.
And did you have neighbours close by?
Well, my grandfather was close and then Kennaugh the Monies was the next.
Where would you go to school then?
Ballamorda.
Did you?
Went down through Glenmore and across the stream and then crossed the Clyker River and up through Clyker Farm. Yes.
What about a wet day? Did you get wet?
Well, if it was too bad, you had to stop home. Because the river was up if it was too bad. Sometimes we've had to get out of school early that in case the river was up that we'd get over the bridge.
And how many would be going to Ballamorda in those days?
Just under 40, I would think. 36 maybe, 38.
So a little village school?
Oh, yes.
One teacher or two?
Two. And if your coats were wet going into school in the morning, there was a big fire guard and the coats was all put round the fire. Of course, there was no heat in the room and the coats was round the fire.
Was the fire the only heat you had in the school?
Yeah, 2 fires, one in each room.
What about school dinners? Did you?
We had to bring sandwiches. But we could get hot water. They boiled a kettle and we got hot drinks.
And did you leave school then from Ballamorda?
No, I went to Castletown for a year. Victoria Road, they closed Ballamorda. My sister went on to St Mark's because that was the junior. And I went to Castletown for a year. John and me went to Castletown for a year.
Was it different?
Oh, much different. Yeah, there was about, I don't know, about somewhere like 400 going then, yeah. There was a lot more to do, a wider experience, yes. And then, of course, you could walk uptown at lunchtime.
And how did you travel then from Ballamorda to Castletown?
Well, we had to walk out to Ballamorda Street to get the bus, which, I don't know, be a mile and a half. Through the fields, mostly.
You would leave school eventually and...
Yes, 14.
And what then?
Stayed home to work on the farm with my father.
Did you though?
No choice then.
Were you just told? Was that just expected of
Just
you?
expected of you, yeah.
Even though you're a girl?
Yes, there was no choice, no.
And what sort of farm work would you do?
Oh, everything. Oh, feeding cattle and cleaning out mostly and whitewashing. And I've done it all. Brought the mare to the smithy.
To get shod?
Yes, to get shod.
Jim Tier's smithy then, it's gone now, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it's gone now.
And Jim Tier himself, the blacksmith
Yes,
there?
himself and Jimmy was there, yes.
And would they be busy in those days?
Yes, quite busy. Yeah, sometimes you didn't have to wait very long. It didn't take them long to shoe a horse, really. There was two of them, you see. They were pretty nifty at the job.
And was all the work on the farm done with horses then?
Oh, yes, horses was a lifeline. There would have been nothing only for the horse. Nobody had a tractor when I started out. No tractors. Well, there might have been on the lower, but I don't think there was many anywhere, really.
And did you work with horses?
Yes. I've never ploughed, but I've done harrowing and rolling. Yes.
How far would you walk in a day behind a pair of horses?
Oh, I don't know. The field would have, I suppose, 5 or 6 acres, maybe.
Back and forward till it was finished?
Back and forward, yes. And you'd go crooked and then you'd try to straighten it and end up worse than ever. Well, it was a lot, and most people was doing the same, you see. Our neighbours, they were all doing the same.
Yes.
Yes.
What about the seasons on the farm then? What about the springtime? Would you be busy in the spring with arable work?
Oh, yes, we're quite busy because you'd be finishing off, feeding the beef cattle and getting the other cattle out on the grass if it was fit. But there wasn't big milking herds then. My father had 8 cows when I started, but you see, there wasn't big milking herds.
But they'd all be cleaned with a shovel and a wheelbarrow?
Oh, yes, and a wheelbarrow, yeah. Wheeling up the plank.
And then putting the dung out with the cart?
Yes.
And did you do all that?
I've never done that, but I've dug turnips and carted them.
It would come to the summertime then, it was the horses that cut the hay and...
Oh, horses done everything. Yes, you couldn't do nothing without the horse, the reaper, the binder, putting the turnips in, the carrots in, harrowing, scarifiring, sledging the ridges. Horse done everything.
Do you remember bad harvests?
Well, it could have been. We've had bad harvests and it could be difficult because sometimes the weather wasn't very good. But then if the binder was going well today, it might be broke down tomorrow.
Yes.
And the only man that could fix it was in Douglas.
Yes.
It could be. But, most people, everybody seemed to manage,
And the tale is told that if one farmer was a bit late and somebody else was finished, you'd go and help to finish off?
Oh, yes. Oh, that wasn't unusual.
And you would help another fella to get finished?
Oh, yes.
And would you have a Dutch barn or were you
No,
stacks?
we had no Dutch barn, just stacks.
How did you thatch the stacks?
My father thatched the stacks.
Rushes?
Yes, we used to cut them up in Kerrickeel-Garies, make bands and cart them home. And my father used to do the thatching, and then when it came to rope, and I had to walk around with the kayar and a bucket.
We've all done a bit of that, I think.
Yeah, and picking stones to weight it down.
Yes.
That was another thing.
Were you proud of the stacks when they were built and thatched? The hack always looked good when it was done, wasn't it?
Well, they all looked well. And people are saying now the owls are missing. Well, that's what the owls is missing. You see, it was the stacks, and then when you'd have a thrashing done and the grain was put on the granary, the windows were open and the owls would be in the granary. I mean, I've heard people saying they don't know what's happened to the owls. Well, I know what's happened to the owls.
And when it would come to the back end then, digging spuds and hard work?
Well, my father used to split the ridges with the plough and then we'd have to pick them. My grandfather went to the show and bought a potato digger, and that was a wonderful. I think he paid about £24 for it. He got into trouble when he got home for spending money, but then a lot of people borrowed it after that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Winter would come on and cattle would in the house and then the work would start on the yard.
Oh, yes. In about October, there was nothing out in the fields, only the sheep. And there wasn't big flocks of sheep then. Not on where we were at all.
And no electricity?
Oh, no electricity, no. That was one of the things. After dinner a day, you had to get the oil and the lamps for the house and get the hurricane's glasses cleaned and paraffin in them for night. Yes.
And doing all the yard work with a hurricane?
Oh, yes, hurricane, yes. The Aladdin lights come in, and my father wasn't very keen on them because they were so hot. He was afraid they'd cause a fire. So we had to stick with the old hurricane.
So you were working home on the farm then, and you'd be a teenager growing up now?
Yes, I was home till I was 26.
What about social life then? Where was the social centre?
There wasn't very much. There'd be tea parties like Ballamora, Ballasalla, the Maloo Church used to have dues in the church house, and then there wasn't much social life in the chapel apart from Sunday. They used to have a Christmas party down in the schoolhouse in about January or February time. Now, there wasn't, you could go out to different things. There were sports in the summer. You took it as it come. There was no problem.
Did you go to Douglas on a Saturday night?
Oh, my son, no.
Did you not? Never?
No, yes, we were allowed to go about twice in the summer.
You're listening to a special Island Life episode. We're looking back into the Manx Radio archive from 2013 to bring you John Kennaugh in conversation with Florrie Kinvig, reflecting back on her life in the southern farming community on the island from the 1920s onwards.
I've known you for years associated with the chapel.
Yes.
Were you always, even in your young days, were you and your family associated with chapel?
Oh, yes, we always went to chapel, yes.
Were you made to go? Or did?
Well, I don't think we were made to go. We were sort of expected to go, and we accepted it.
It was a way of life, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a way. Well, sometimes it was the only way you could get out. If you didn't go to chapel, you didn't get out.
So which chapel would you be associated with in those days?
Kennaugh.
Were you with Kennaugh then?
We went down to Grenaby till every year at Ballaglanny when I was 9.
Right.
My father started the farm at Ballaglanny when we were 9.
And that's where you grew up?
That's where I grew up, yes.
So it was up the road then to Kennaugh?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yes. Well, in the winter we had to bring a light because it'd be absolutely pitch dark. So there was no lights in the country, you see. Only perhaps a single paraffin lamp on a table.
And could you walk about in the dark?
You carried the hurricane usually. If you were going on strange ground or even out, you had to have the hurricane. And then Woolworth started to sell what they called flash lamps then. And, well, that was wonderful till the battery ran out.
Yes. And how was the chapel lit then?
Paraffin lamps. Ella Watterson used to go in the afternoon and they'd be all oiled and lit about. She used to go in about 5 o'clock to light them, yes.
Tell me about Tom the Fiddler.
Oh, well, I remember Tom. I walked up to chapel with Minnie and Ivy and they would have to carry the fiddle and I would have to carry the light and Tom would be pegging in with a stick, you know.
What was his role in chapel then?
Playing the fiddle.
No organ?
Yes, the organ would be there.
Oh, and he played the fiddle as well?
Oh, he played the fiddle as well, yes. Oh, yes.
Do you remember him playing the fiddle?
Oh, yes, I've heard him playing the fiddle. But they said he didn't always agree with the organist, you know. He'd tell her if she was in the wrong key or it didn't suit him. It was sometimes him that was in the wrong key, I suppose.
At the chapel then, there would be dues at the chapel. What were the highlights of the year?
Well, the Harvest Thanksgiving and the anniversary was about the only things. And then they started, well, we had the Eelverry too, of course, but we never had tea at the Eelverry until we got the silver band, Russian silver band. That was the first time we had tea at Eelverry, but we always had tea at the Harvest.
Right.
But you had to bring all the dishes, you know, and the food as well.
But there wasn't a lot of room in the chapel, sorry?
Not a lot, but I've seen it when the people couldn't get in the chapel. Yeah, they've sat in the pulpit and sat everywhere, yeah.
Was it a good community where everybody sort of together and all?
Oh, yes.
Same lifestyle?
Oh, yes, the same lifestyle, yes. No, yeah, everybody was the same then. There was no cars, you just walked everywhere.
And what about the neighbourhood round Grenaby and Kennaugh then as neighbours if a family was, if there was somebody sick or...
everybody helped each other. I mean, there was 2 old couples living down in Balladuggan at the top of Grenaby Hill there, and West Stanley is now. he had to go away to Clatterbridge and she'd had a stroke. Frances Kennaugh from Moneymore, she was my age. We done a night each for a fortnight, sleeping and with the old lady, like, and giving her breakfast in the morning, getting the fire lit, and yes, and then a woman came in to clean, and Mrs. Shimon came in to clean. But Frances, we were there in the morning. Well, she would do a night, and I would do a night.
Right.
Yes, well, I don't know, we'd be about 17 or 18 or something like that.
When you married then and farmed on your own, did life change a lot then?
I suppose it did, really. We were in Ballaglonny down here where Ashley is.
Yes.
It had a different light because we were working for ourselves.
That's right.
You see, that was a big difference. And we kept a lot of poultry, and we used to put milk to the hotels in Port Erin. And I've been plucking chickens at 5 o'clock in the morning.
And somebody once said to me when I started to work on my own, you're working for the worst boss you ever worked for now. And would that be the case? Would it be sort of all hours of daylight?
It was all hours, yes. And Robert's mother and father was in poor health, and sometimes he had to sleep down there with them. You know, but they all took turns, you know, and he had to take his turn with the rest of them.
Yeah. Now, he was a great man for stock, though, wasn't he, Robert, your husband?
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, sheep and horses. He wouldn't have done cows like Ashley is doing.
But it's rubbed off a bit, though, hasn't it?
Yes.
He's still the stock there. But he's a great man for sheepdog trials.
Yes, he liked the sheepdog trials.
And ran dogs.
Yes, I think Ashley is more like Robert's father, really.
Right.
Yes.
Do you ever remember being snowed up at Kennaugh?
Oh, yes. That wasn't unusual.
Was it not?
No, every winter nearly we'd be snowed up. Yes.
How did you cope?
The houses generally would get a bag of flour and a bag of sugar and a box of tea and a pack of soap, and the poultry would be getting sold at Christmas, the dressed poultry, and then my mother would start buying things in case it snowed.
So they were always prepared?
Oh yes, you had to have coal and everything, all in. Coke, you used to burn coke too.
Where would you shop then from Kennaugh?
Castletown. I think there was about 3 grocers in Castletown.
Were the tradespeople coming round to the farms in the neighbourhood?
Not a lot, no. There was the bakers started coming when the vans got on the road.
What would that be, 2 or 3 times a week maybe?
Oh yes, Mowers would come twice a week and Kermid's came twice a week. And then Holmes's was up a couple of times a week. We didn't deal with Holmes's, it was Mowers and Kermid's we had. But they were coming.
Now, one of the things that I've heard about the anniversary, it was always the first Sunday in August, have I got that right?
I think it originally, if there was 5 Sundays in July, it was on the second Sunday. But if there was only 4 Sundays in July, 4 Sundays it'd be on the second Sunday, 5 Sundays in July it'd be on the third Sunday.
All right.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've always heard was when anybody went out for tea, you're always going to get blackberry pie, blaeberry pie.
Oh yes, there's quite a people used to pick blaeberries, yes.
And was there a lot of blaeberries up around Kennaugh?
Yeah, well, to be quite honest, I was never into picking blaeberries.
It's a tiresome job, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember my father used to think blaeberries were wonderful, but I was never into picking blaeberries. I could manage the blackberries fine, but I was never into picking blaeberries.
If somebody was ill, and what about doctors coming up to such a place as Kennaugh?
You had to go and get the doctor. You either went to Castletown and to the house, or Kennaugh Spallahot had a telephone, and they were very good. You could go there and telephone. They were very good. Anybody had anything urgent, you could go there and telephone, and I think you left your money on the table, tuppence or threepence or something.
Right, yes. Things we take for granted now, don't we?
Yes.
Pick the phone up now.
Oh, yes. No, there wasn't many. No, I think that was the nearest telephone for a long time.
Were you like us when we were growing up, the new clothes for the anniversary that had to last you for the rest of the year?
Oh, yes, they did. Yes. Oh, gosh, and if you had shoes, if you were caught kicking a stone, my gosh, you were for the long haul.
Did you have Sunday best?
Oh, yes. Later on, it was mostly what you went to school and
right.
You went on so because the minute you came home from school, you had to go and change.
Oh, yes.
You see. But we had Sunday shoes, like at Sometimes top coats and all was what we wore at school, you know.
The change that takes place, new people come to live in the area. Do you still remember that and wish you were back in the old days, or are you still content with what's happening now?
Well, you just accept what's going on. In many ways, we're very lucky. We're extremely lucky, but I think a lot of things are taken for granted, you know.
Do you think if people lived in your day, Florrie, that they would appreciate more what they've got now?
Yes, I suppose they would. Well, there's still quite a few about that lived in my day, but I think things are moving on fast in times, you know.
They are. Are we more wasteful now than we were then?
Oh, yes, I would think so. No, I think people are more... Well, when I was young and shopping for my mother, you would never see big trolleys of groceries. Somebody would be carrying a basket and everything would be in the basket. But a lot of the farms, you see, had a pig in the barrel and herrings in the barrel and very often a mutton. You know, they had a lot, and then there was always chickens. But it wasn't always easy to get a chicken. You were eating the profit if you ate a chicken.
All the spuds and veg in the field?
Oh, everything was grown, yes. Cabbage, carrots, onions, cauliflower.
Because your people were great for veg, weren't they?
Yeah, my father grew quite a lot of veg.
He did?
Yes. Peas, and we grew, and all that sort of stuff.
What happened in the wartime? Was it vastly different for farmers up in Carrickeel?
Well, life went on much the same as it was. It didn't affect up there very much. It was in other places where the younger people went to the war.
Yes.
That had a big effect. That had a big effect on everything. That on the country life and all sorts of life. You see, there was hundreds of young fellas went away to the war. You know, I knew quite a few and they never came back.
Of your generation?
Yes. Oh, that had a big... Because people used to employ a man, you see. Well, they went off to the war and... It was mostly families after that on the farms, yes.
Right. And that was another thing, right? There was always help on the farms, wasn't there?
Oh, yes, there was always help. Different to now, you know, there's not much help now. Of course, we were lucky because the two boys stayed home, but a lot of families today doesn't.
No.
They don't stay home.
And farmers were kept, they were spick and span, weren't they? Whitewashing would be done.
Oh, yes, whitewashing, yeah. And the hedges would be cut. That seems to be a thing now that doesn't seem to get done so much, you know. The war did bring a lot of changes because the tractors and the vans started coming in after the war, and that was a big change.
Now, some people look back, like you're looking back, and they call them the good old days.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think the farms weren't so bad. There was good times and there was poor times, but when you had a house with a family in it and the man was out of work, that was very hard.
Because there were no national health in your days?
Oh, nothing, no.
Did you have to pay the doctor?
Oh, yes, you had to pay the doctor, and you had to be on the way dying nearly before you'd get the doctor. Yes, it was serious if a doctor had to come.
And would you have a district nurse?
Yes, a district nurse come after the war, and she was as good as any doctor. She was very good. That was a big help to people with young children and all, and older people. That was a very big help.
You say you're 90? You're 90?
In August.
90 in August. Life still good?
Oh, yes. Apart from having this flu, I've had a good winter. I've been out every day around the place. I'm very fond of the garden, and I don't stop in the house unless I got to.
So you're a real country lady, enjoying life in retirement now.
Oh, yes.
And
I haven't retired yet.
And our thanks to Florrie Kinvig for sharing her memories of rural life in the south of the island in the 20s and 30s. We'll be back at the same time next week with more reflections of life in the Isle of Man in days gone by. That so the coming age, lost in the empire's mass, yet happily longing for their fathers, here may see as in a glass what they held dear. May say, 'Twas thus and thus they lived, and as the time flood onward rolls, secure an anchor for their Celtic souls.
You've been listening to a special programme from the Manx Radio Archive. Much missed broadcaster John Kennaugh in conversation with the wonderful Florrie Kinvig. And if you missed any of this evening's programme, you can listen back again via podcast, either at manxradio.com or using your usual provider. Join us at the same time next week for another dip into the vault.